The steady hum of the merchant ship's engines filled the bridge as Captain James Miller stared at the holographic display floating above his command console. His weathered hands moved through the projection, sorting through the latest reports from Earth's coalition government. 50 years had passed since humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council, and humans were still considered the new kids on the block. "Captain," called out Tom from the communications station, "we're getting a priority broadcast from the Council." Miller straightened in his chair. Priority broadcasts were rare, especially for a small merchant vessel like theirs. The Rainbow Trader might not have been the prettiest ship in space, but it had served them well for the past 8 years, carrying cargo between Earth and the outer colonies. "Put it on the main screen," Miller ordered. The holographic display flickered, replacing cargo manifests with the official seal of the Galactic Council. The seal dissolved to reveal a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 eyes. Grand Speaker Roberts. Miller had always found it amusing that the aliens used human names in official communications, a courtesy that had started after first contact. "Attention all Council members and allied species," the Grand Speaker's voice boomed through the bridge. "The Federation of Light and the Star Empire have declared open war upon each other. The Council calls upon all member species to provide military support in containing this conflict." Miller's first officer, Jack, whistleblow. "Well, that's not good. Those two have been at each other's throats for centuries." The bridge crew fell silent as they watched the broadcast. The Grand Speaker continued detailing the situation. Two of the most powerful alien federations were about to tear each other apart, and a Galactic Council feared the war would spread. "All species are required to send representatives to the Emergency Council session," the Grand Speaker concluded. "Even minor species must attend." The broadcast ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Everyone knew what minor species meant. It was the Council's polite way of referring to humanity. "Plot a course to the nearest Council station," Miller ordered. "They'll need every ship they can get, even small traders like us." As the Rainbow Trader changed course, Miller couldn't help but smile. The aliens had always looked down on humans for their primitive technology and their short history in space. Humanity had only been part of galactic society for 50 years, but they had learned quickly. While other species had thousands of years of peaceful expansion, humans had something different: thousands of years of warfare. 3 days later, the Rainbow Trader docked at Council Station 7, joining hundreds of other vessels from across the galaxy. The station's massive docking bay was filled with ships of all shapes and sizes, from elegant alien cruisers to bulky human freighters. Miller walked through the crowded corridors, noticing how other species gave human visitors extra space. They always did. Despite being considered primitive, humans had earned a reputation for being unpredictable. "Did you hear?" a passing merchant asked his companion. "The humans are sending military advisors." Military advisors? What could primitives possibly teach us about modern warfare? Miller kept walking, his smile hidden. The aliens had never bothered to study human history. They didn't know about the countless wars that had shaped Earth's civilizations. They had never heard of guerrilla warfare, had never considered concepts like asymmetric combat or psychological operations. Reaching the station's central chamber, Miller found his contact, Council Representative Davis, another human name used by the blue-skinned aliens. The representative's 4 eyes widened in recognition. "Captain Miller," Davis greeted him. "Your ship has been temporarily commissioned for Council service. You'll be transporting a group of human military advisors to the conflict zone." "Military advisors?" Miller asked, keeping his face neutral. "I thought we were a minor species." "The Council believes all perspectives may be valuable," Davis replied diplomatically. "Even limited ones." Miller nodded, maintaining his professional demeanor. But inside, he knew something the aliens didn't. Humanity was about to change galactic warfare forever, and not in the way anyone expected. As he walked back to his ship, Miller reflected on an old Earth saying, "Be careful what you wish for." The Galactic Council had asked for humanity's help in their war. They were about to get it. The war room aboard the Council's flagship glowed with holographic displays showing battle formations. 12 alien commanders stood around the central table, their multiple eyes fixed on Captain Miller as he walked in with his small team of human advisors. "You're late," growled Commander First, his scaled skin reflecting the blue light of the holograms. Like many Council officials, he used a simplified name for human interaction. "Actually," Miller said calmly, "we're right on time. We spent the last hour observing your battle preparations from the observation deck." This caught the aliens' attention. None of them had noticed the humans watching. "Impossible," Second Commander said, her crystal-like skin shimmering. "Our security systems would have detected you." Tom, Miller's communications officer, pulled out a simple paper notebook. "Your security relies too heavily on detecting electronic devices and energy signatures. We used these instead." The alien commanders stared at the paper notebook like it was some kind of advanced technology. Miller held back a smile. This was exactly the kind of thinking they needed to change. "Let's begin the briefing," Miller said, stepping up to the holographic display. "I've reviewed your standard battle tactics. They're very orderly." "Of course they are," First said proudly. "We've refined these formations over thousands of years. Each ship knows its exact place and purpose." Miller nodded. "And that's exactly why you're losing this war." The room erupted in angry mutters. Jack, Miller's first officer, stepped forward and pressed a button on their datapad. The holographic display changed to show historical footage from Earth. "This," Miller explained, "is how humans fought our last major war. Notice anything different?" The aliens watched in silence as images showed soldiers in camouflage, guerrilla tactics, and asymmetric warfare operations. Their expressions shifted from dismissal to confusion, then to growing concern. "This is barbaric," Third Commander protested. "There's no honor in hiding and striking from shadows." "There's no honor in losing either," Miller countered. "Your enemy expects you to fight the traditional way. They'd predict every move, because you follow the same patterns you've used for centuries." He switched the display to show the current star map. "You have superior numbers and better technology, but you're losing because you're predictable. Humans learned long ago that winning isn't about having the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons." "Then what is it about?" asked Second, leaning forward with interest. "It's about making your enemy afraid to fight you in the first place," Miller said quietly. "It's about being unpredictable, adaptable, and willing to do whatever it takes to win." The room fell silent. Miller could see the internal struggle in their alien faces. Their entire culture was built around order and tradition, especially in warfare. What he was suggesting went against everything they believed. "Show us," First finally said. "Show us how humans fight." Over the next few hours, Miller and his team introduced concepts that had been common on Earth for centuries. They taught the aliens about disguising ships as civilian vessels, using smaller craft to take down larger ones, and the art of misinformation. "This isn't just about tactics," Miller explained. "It's about changing how you think about warfare itself. Every advantage your enemy has can become a weakness if you approach it differently." As the briefing ended, Miller noticed the alien commanders talking among themselves in hushed tones. Some looked troubled, others intrigued. First approached him as the others filed out. "Your methods," First said slowly, "they're effective but disturbing. How did your species develop such tactics?" Miller's expression grew serious. "Necessity, Commander. On Earth, we rarely had the luxury of fighting fair. We learned to use everything at our disposal because the alternative was extinction." As he walked back to his quarters that night, Miller knew they had planted the seeds of change. The aliens would never look at warfare the same way again. But as he thought about Earth's violent history, he wondered if that was really a good thing. The next day, they would begin implementing these new tactics. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had survived countless wars on their home planet. and it would never be the same. Red emergency lights flashed across the bridge of the enemy flagship as alarms blared through its corridors. The ship's commander, a tall crystalline being, stared in disbelief at the tactical display. "Impossible," he whispered. They were just cargo ships. But the truth floated before his eyes. 3 of his most powerful warships had just been destroyed by what appeared to be modified merchant vessels. The Council forces had somehow turned simple trading ships into deadly weapons platforms. Meanwhile, aboard the Council flagship, Miller watched the battle unfold with First Commander and his team. The alien commander's scales had taken on a lighter shade, their species equivalent of a pleased expression. "Your plan worked perfectly," First said, his voice filled with wonder. "They never suspected civilian ships could carry such weapons." Miller nodded. "The best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't know exists. Now, let's move to Phase 2. At his signal, Tom activated the special communications channel. Across the battlefield, hundreds of small devices activated, flooding enemy communications with false signals and confusing their sensors. "What's happening?" Third Commander asked, watching the enemy fleet's orderly formation dissolve into chaos. "Electronic warfare," Jack explained. "We're making their instruments show things that aren't there and hide things that are." The enemy fleet, faced with sensor ghosts and false readings, broke their perfect formation. Some ships fired at empty space, while others crashed into each other trying to avoid phantom threats. "Launch the strike teams," Miller ordered. Small, fast attack craft emerged from hidden positions. These ships, crewed by mixed teams of humans and aliens trained in Earth's special operations tactics, darted between the confused enemy vessels. They targeted crucial systems, engines, weapons, and communications arrays, then vanished before the enemy could respond. Second Commander watched in fascination. Such small ships should be useless against capital vessels, but they're tearing the enemy fleet apart. "Size doesn't always matter," Miller replied. "A small knife in the right place can do more damage than 100 heavy blows." The battle continued for hours, but its outcome was never in doubt. The enemy fleet, trained for traditional ship-to-ship combat, had no defense against these unconventional tactics. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. "Victory is ours," First announced, his scales now almost white with excitement, and with minimal losses to our own forces. But Miller noticed something concerning. The alien commanders were studying the battle recordings with an intensity he hadn't seen before. They weren't just learning these tactics, they were becoming fascinated by them. Later that day, in his private quarters, Miller received an urgent message from Earth's coalition government. He read it twice, his face growing grim. "What's wrong?" Tom asked, noticing his captain's expression. "Other species are requesting access to Earth's military history," Miller explained. "They're particularly interested in our wars of the 20th and 21st centuries." Jack whistled low. "That can't be good." "It gets worse," Miller continued. "The Council's member species are already adapting our tactics for their own use. The Star Empire reported 3 attacks on their civilian stations, attacks using our methods. The implications were clear. Humanity hadn't just changed how this war was fought. They'd changed how all future wars would be fought. The elegant, formal combat of the galaxy's past was disappearing, replaced by something far more efficient and far more deadly. "Maybe we should have thought this through more carefully," Tom suggested. Miller shook his head. "They would have figured it out eventually. At least this way, we can try to guide them, teach them about the responsibilities that come with these tactics." But as he looked out his viewport at the distant stars, Miller wondered if they had opened a door that could never be closed. The galaxy had asked for humanity's help in fighting their war. Instead, humanity had taught them how to fight like humans, and that might be the most dangerous weapon of all. The mood in the Council's Strategic Command Center was tense. Miller stood before a massive holographic display, showing dozens of battles raging across the galaxy. But these weren't the organized, formal conflicts of the past. These were chaotic, brutal engagements that would have looked familiar to any human military historian. "We've lost control," First Commander said quietly. His scales had turned a dark gray, a sign of deep concern. "Other species are taking your tactics and improving them." Miller watched as the display showed a civilian space station exploding. The attacking forces had used stolen merchant ship signatures to get close, just as he had taught them. But instead of targeting military vessels, they had struck civilian targets. "This wasn't what we intended," Miller said, his voice heavy. "Intent matters little now," Second Commander replied. Her crystalline form reflected the red warning lights that seemed to flash constantly these days. "Our forces have begun using something they call total war, a concept they found in Earth's historical records." Tom, who had been monitoring communications, looked up from his station. "Sir, you need to see this." The main display shifted to show footage from a recent battle. A group of council ships had surrounded an enemy outpost. Instead of the traditional siege tactics the galaxy had used for millennia, they had cut off all supply lines and threatened to destroy any civilian vessels attempting to bring food or medical supplies. "They're using blockade tactics," Jack observed, "just like Earth's naval warfare." But it was worse than that. Miller watched as the Council forces transmitted their demands: surrender, or the civilian population would starve. It was a strategy straight out of humanity's darkest chapters. "Your species," First said, turning to Miller, "how did you survive using such methods against each other?" Miller's response was interrupted by another alert. The Star Empire had just deployed a new weapon: autonomous drones programmed to target enemy leadership. The concept had come directly from studying Earth's development of assassination tactics. "Captain," Tom called out, his voice urgent, "Earth's coalition government is sending a priority message." The message appeared on Miller's personal screen. As he read it, his face grew pale. "What is it?" Jack asked. "The Council species. They've discovered our nuclear deterrence documents. They're studying the concept of mutually assured destruction." The room fell silent. The aliens had already adopted human guerrilla warfare, special operations, and psychological warfare. If they began developing planet-killing weapons based on Earth's Cold War strategies, "We have to stop this," Miller declared. "These tactics were born from humanity's darkest moments. We can't let them spread through the galaxy." "It's too late," Second said, her crystalline form dimming. "Our intelligence reports show that 17 species have already established their own special forces units. 12 more are developing electronic warfare capabilities. And 5, she paused, 5 are researching what they call ultimate deterrence." Miller turned to First Commander. "Call an emergency session of the Galactic Council. This has gone too far." "The Council is already gathering," First replied, "but not to discuss peace. They want to learn more about Earth's military history, particularly something called proxy wars." The implications hit Miller like a physical blow. Humanity had wanted to prove its worth to the galaxy, to show that even a primitive species could contribute. Instead, they had introduced concepts that were rapidly reshaping galactic civilization. "Send a message to all human advisors," Miller ordered Tom. "Tell them to suspend all tactical training immediately." But as he watched the battle displays, showing conflicts that looked increasingly like Earth's own wars, Miller knew it might be too late. The galaxy had asked for humanity's help in fighting a war. Instead, humanity had taught them how to fight like humans. And now, the entire galaxy was about to learn why Earth's history was filled with warnings about the true cost of war. Miller sat in his quarters aboard the Rainbow Trader, watching multiple news feeds from across the galaxy. Each one told the same story. Warfare had changed forever. The elegant space battles of the past had been replaced by something far more brutal and efficient. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Tom entered, carrying a data tablet with trembling hands. "You need to see this, Captain," he said, his voice unusually quiet. "The Council Archives just released their latest study of Earth's military history." Miller took the tablet and felt his blood run cold. The title read, Strategic Analysis, Earth's World Wars, A Guide to Total Victory. How many species have accessed this? Miller asked. All of them, Tom replied. Even the peaceful ones. They say it's for defensive purposes only. But a flash from the news feeds caught their attention. The Star Empire had just announced its new military doctrine, directly copied from Earth's Cold War strategies. Their announcement included footage of their first successful planetary bombardment test. They're all doing it, Jack said, entering the room. Every major species is restructuring their military forces based on Earth's history. The Crystal Confederation just established their first Special Forces unit. The Hive Collective is developing guerrilla warfare tactics for their drone swarms. Miller's communication console lit up with an urgent message from First Commander. When the alien's image appeared, his scales were almost black with distress. Captain Miller, First's voice was shaky. We need you at the council chamber immediately. Something has happened. 20 minutes later, Miller stood in the massive council chamber, surrounded by representatives from hundreds of species. The room's center displayed a holographic recording that made even the most hardened warriors flinch. A small fleet of civilian-looking ships had approached a major space station. Using forged credentials, a tactic learned from humans, they had gotten close. Then, instead of attacking with conventional weapons, they had deliberately crashed their ships into the station's vital areas. Suicide attacks, Miller whispered. They're learning about suicide attacks. This is what your species has taught us, a crystalline representative accused. We found records of these terrorist tactics in Earth's history. Now they spread through our civilization like a virus. The chamber erupted in angry shouts and accusations. Some species demanded access to more of Earth's military records, claiming they needed them for protection. Others called for an immediate ban on all human military knowledge. You don't understand, Miller tried to explain. These tactics, they came from our darkest times. They're warnings about what to avoid, not instructions to follow. But the aliens weren't listening. On the main display, more reports poured in. The Federation of Light had developed its own version of special operations teams. The Star Empire was researching biological warfare. 3 minor species had formed an alliance based on Earth's nanostructure. Captain, Second Commander's voice cut through the chaos. Your species has changed everything. We thought we were advanced because we had faster ships and better weapons. But you showed us what real warfare looks like. Miller watched as more tactical displays showed battles across the galaxy. Stealth attacks, ambushes, false flag operations, all concepts that had been unthinkable in galactic warfare just months ago. We have to stop this, he said, but his voice was drowned out by the continuing arguments. A new alert flashed across the chamber's displays. The Star Empire had just announced its development of a doomsday weapon, inspired by Earth's nuclear deterrence policies. As Miller looked around the chamber, he saw fear in the eyes of every species present. They had wanted to learn about human warfare. Now they were learning why humans had spent so much time warning about its horrors. The galaxy was about to understand why Earth's history books were filled with tales of war's true cost, and the price of that lesson would be devastating. The emergency alarms blared throughout the council station as Miller raced toward the main chamber. The past week had seen more death and destruction than the galaxy had experienced in the last 1,000 years. Report. He called out to Tom, who was running beside him. It's bad, Captain, Tom gasped. The Star Empire used their new doomsday weapon. An entire solar system, just gone. 3 inhabited worlds, dozens of space stations, all destroyed. They burst into the council chamber to find chaos. Representatives from hundreds of species were shouting, threatening, and some were even crying, or their species equivalent of crying. This has to stop. A representative of the Crystal Confederation slammed his crystalline fist on his podium. We lost 2 colony worlds this morning to what the humans call preemptive strikes. First Commander spotted Miller and quickly moved to his side. The alien's scales were now completely black, a sign of extreme distress that Miller had never seen before. "The Federation of Light has withdrawn from the war," First reported quietly. "After losing their capital world to guerrilla attacks, their leadership has gone into hiding. Something your people called going underground." Miller watched the main display showing the current state of the galaxy. Red dots indicated ongoing conflicts, and the map was covered in them. But these weren't the organized battles of the past. They were brutal, efficient engagements using every dirty trick humanity had ever invented. "Captain Miller," Second Commander's voice came from behind him. "The Council has been studying more of your history. We found something called the Geneva Conventions. Why did your species need rules for warfare?" Before Miller could answer, another alert sounded. The Hive Collective, previously known for their peaceful trading networks, had just launched what they called a shock and awe campaign against their ancient rivals. "Because without rules, this happens." Miller gestured at the display. "War becomes an excuse to do the unthinkable." The chamber fell silent as a new report appeared. The Star Empire had begun taking civilian hostages, threatening to execute them unless their demands were met. They had learned this from studying Earth's darker historical moments. "We have lost our way." An ancient species representative spoke up. Their voice carried the weight of thousands of years of civilization. "In just a few months, we have abandoned warfare protocols that served us for millennia." Jack rushed into the chamber, his face pale. "Captain, Earth just sent new orders. All human military advisors are to cease operations immediately and return home." But it was too late. On the main display, more reports flooded in. Species that had been peaceful for thousands of years were now building special forces units. Trade federations were converting merchant ships into Q ships, another concept learned from Earth's naval history. "The Council will now vote." The Grand Speaker's voice boomed through the chamber. "The motion: to contain the spread of human military influence in galactic affairs." Miller watched as species after species cast their votes. Even those who had eagerly learned human tactics were now voting in favor. They had seen what unrestricted warfare could do, and it terrified them. "Look at what we've become," First Commander said softly. "In trying to win a war, we've lost something far more precious: our civilization's soul." The final votes were tallied as Miller stood in silence. The galaxy had wanted to learn how humans fought wars. Now they understood why humans had so many stories warning about war's true cost. "The vote is unanimous," the Grand Speaker announced. "The Council will now draft the Human Military Containment Act." As Miller looked around the chamber, he saw fear in every alien face. They had learned humanity's most dangerous lesson, that the most effective warriors are often the ones who have the most to lose by fighting. The galaxy would never be the same again. The council chamber was unusually quiet as Miller stood before the assembled representatives of every major species in the galaxy. The Human Military Containment Act was about to become law, and he had been chosen to witness it on humanity's behalf. "The act will now be read," the Grand Speaker announced, his 4 eyes fixed on the document before him. "From this day forward, no human shall be permitted to participate in any military action beyond Earth's solar system. No human military knowledge shall be shared with non-Earth species. No human tactical advisors shall be employed in any capacity during conflicts." Miller watched as First Commander, his scales now a deep blue of resignation, added his signature to the document. Second Commander's crystalline form sparkled dimly as she did the same. "The irony," Tom whispered from behind Miller. "They're banning us because we're too good at something we never wanted to be good at in the first place." The Rainbow Trader's crew stood in silence as species after species signed the document. Many of these same representatives had eagerly sought human military advice just months ago. Now they couldn't sign the van fast enough. "Captain Miller," the Grand Speaker called, "you will now witness the final article of the Act." Miller stepped forward and read the words appearing before him. "In recognition of humanity's unique and dangerous expertise in warfare, Earth shall be reclassified from a minor species to a protected independent civilization. No species shall engage in military action against Earth or its colonies. To do so would risk humans joining the conflict, an outcome now recognized as too dangerous to contemplate. "You've made us into the galaxy's boogeymen," Jack said quietly. "No," First Commander interrupted, approaching them. "We've made you into something far more valuable, a deterrent. No species will risk war if they believe humans might get involved." The chamber's main display showed the current state of the galaxy. The red dots indicating conflicts were fewer now. The mere threat of human involvement had caused several species to withdraw from their wars. "The final vote will now be taken," the Grand Speaker announced, "on the complete implementation of the Human Military Containment Act." The vote was unanimous. Every species, even those who had most eagerly adopted human tactics, voted to ban humanity from galactic warfare. They had learned their lesson. Some things were better left unknown. Later, aboard the Rainbow Trader, Miller sat in his quarters reading messages from Earth. The coalition government was surprisingly pleased with the outcome. Earth's influence had grown enormously, despite, or perhaps because of, the ban. "It's official," Tom said, entering with the final report. "All human military advisors have been recalled. The knowledge-sharing programs have been shut down. We're officially too dangerous to be trusted with war." Miller looked out his viewport at the massive council station. Dozens of ships were docked there, their crews no doubt discussing the day's events. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. "What happens now?" Jack asked. "Now," Miller smiled slightly, "now we go back to being traders. But everyone will know that somewhere out there, on a small blue planet, lives a species so good at warfare that they had to be banned from practicing it." First Commander had requested one final meeting before the Rainbow Trader departed. His scales had returned to their normal color as he spoke to Miller. "Your species taught us something important," First said, "not just about how to fight wars, but about why we shouldn't want to. Your history is a warning that we should have heeded sooner." As the Rainbow Trader prepared to leave the station, Miller took one last look at the galactic news feeds. Species were already signing new peace treaties, citing the human factor as a reason to avoid conflict. They had succeeded in their original mission, helping to end the war, but they had done it in a way no one had expected. The galaxy hadn't banned humans because they were weak. They had banned humans because they were too strong. And sometimes, that was the greatest victory of all.